With Michigan in the books, it's time to turn our focus to right and left turns. We got some newcomers this week as we head to Indy Road Course. This is the angle of pursuit. We will have your DFS and betting all set up.
Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack.
Logano has been the class of the field.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Yeah, I need to change my underwear.
Brian Twining. It feels like Michigan ended only yesterday, and in part because it almost was. It was, obviously Monday late. We're sitting here Wednesday now at NASCAR. Quick turnaround. I was impressed, honestly, with how fast books were getting odds up, considering the race ended, and like within that same day, it almost seemed like they had odds up at some places, which was pretty crazy. It was a shit show for us on Team Hendrick. If you played them in DraftKings, if you had them in your betting card, or Kyle Busch, you could pretty much rip up your card by Sunday, 20 minutes into the race. It was just done. So that was really fun. I know some people enjoyed the race. I know there was some excitement, and of course the guy that we talked about that were like, no way this guy can win 2 races in a row, right? Goes out and pulls, and obviously maybe that race happens Sunday. It doesn't happen. I don't know. But shouts to Chris Buescher and RFK for really doing it. How's everything going, and where are you at as we sit here Wednesday evening?
Well, I just want to start off by saying that the last comment in our intro video from Tyler Reddick's team, I think I need to change my underwear, was kind of the way I was feeling on Sunday, as you said, 20 minutes into the race when Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, all the guys were wrecking out. Anybody that I bet seemed to have issues. But no, like to the Buescher thing, we've been talking about him a lot, whether it was last year or this year. You could tell that he was a much better driver than I think the results indicated. And RFK has they've found something. They've taken that second year or third year step, kind of the same way we saw 23XI do last year with Kurt Busch and Bubba Wallace. And they've parlayed that into 2023. But I don't think it's that surprising that they're performing well. Obviously, Buescher winning 2 races in a row, I think is not something any of us could have predicted or even thought was possible. But going into this road course, Indy road course here, people can't, they just can't discount Buescher this week either. I mean, he's somebody who's performed pretty well at road courses over the last 2 years. So, can we see 3 in a row? I think it's
turkey action. Yeah, no, it's very much in play. There's a lot to be excited about this week. I think there's some really interesting odds, but we'll have to figure out kind of mentally where we're at, because obviously SVG is back. We also have some road course ringers, which is completely throwing the odds off and making things not make sense. So we have to figure out at Sonoma, at Coda, we've found ways to find value pre-practice, pre-qualifying that have gone into amazing tickets on race day. Even if they didn't win, obviously we got Truex to Sonoma. That was wonderful. I feel like we can do it again, but we have to figure out, are we chasing something? Are we actually getting good numbers? Where's the value at? So we will definitely do that, but we have to talk Michigan. We have to look at our DraftKings lineups and our ugly betting cards, because
disgusting.
We gotta do our due diligence here. So let me share my screen. We'll run through some thoughts, and as we kind of go through it, obviously recap some more thoughts about the ugliness of Michigan. So obviously, when you go in on Hendrick guys, Alex Bowman, who got to Monday, was looking amazing. I thought, here we go. Even if he doesn't win, I had him head to head. I had him like a top 10. They all felt like, easy money, easy cashes. And of course, he can't even finish the race. So having Elliott crash out, which, by the way, I go in on Elliott never. I got some excitement about him last week. People were
I definitely take the blame for that.
you brought up very valid points, very reasonable points, and the price for him made sense. And of course, the week I go in, he can't even make it through the first stage and is out of the race. So shouts to him. And we'll be back on our bullshit this week with average ass Chase Elliott, because he is in fade territory once again.
Yeah.
Alex Bowman obviously crashed. Kyle Busch crashed. Chastain was fine, but starting second, you need him to move forward. You need him to have more fast laps.
And I was even concerned that Chastain was going to struggle to find the top 10 too until late.
Yeah.
Like you could tell that he was kind of fading.
Yeah.
Most of the race, I believe, from what I saw, he was kind of running around that 10th through 12th position. So like Chevys in general had an absolute shit show of a day.
Yeah, it was
Michigan.
just bad. And then obviously Dinger didn't, like, he had speed in practice, and we're like, okay, here we go. Guy who can move up from 24th, maybe gets you a top 15 at worst, and ends up 2 spots back of where he started. So you don't love that. More Hendrick nonsense over here. Obviously, Kyle Larson was able to get up to a top 5, which is nice, but Byron, Bowman, and Chase Elliott all crashed out.
Just on that real quick, it was a horrible day if your last name started with B, unless you were Chris Buescher. I mean,
and of course we put the other RFK driver, and we should have just doubled up with RFK and not thought about it.
And let me just say, I didn't bet it because I apparently don't like winning bets. I just like losing almost every single one. But I did call out Kozlowski. I liked his top 10 number, which was still really close to even money. Sitting post qualifying, I believe it was still like minus 120, minus 125. Yeah. So, I kind of expected that out of him. I didn't think he would get a top 5 though.
Yeah, we know we don't like hitting winners around here. It's not our cup of tea. And of course, we talked about Chris Buescher and could he be top Ford? And there was really good numbers on it. And
did we bet
take any of it?
Hell no.
No, he's not going to do that 2 weeks in a row. We can't rely on Christopher Buescher. We got to bet on average ass Chase Elliott. That's the goal. And look where it got us. So not ideal. We did have a nice runs with Corey LaJoie. Obviously got a top 15, and Ty Dillon got
baby,
top 20. So like if we could have figured out the other 3 parts, maybe we have a much better day. But that's okay. And then over on the betting card, lots of red. There is some green though. Shouts to Eric Jones. Plus 375 prior to practice and qualifying.
Thanks to Caesars for the friggin'
plus 575.
That was ridiculous.
Thank you for that. Harvick over Reddick at plus money ended up working out. Reddick was really good and had a nice day, and
till it wasn't.
And his last name doesn't even start with B. And then Jones over Dillon was getting plus money. I thought that was wild. So I not the week I was looking for, but a little more green.
Not as bad as mine.
So that was nice. Brian went all out, loved the numbers, loved the card, and did not go well. So Bubba, average ass, some more Elliott there. You had Busch, you had Chastain, Dinger top 10. Like we were so excited about all of our bets and how great they were going to be, and Byron over the Marty party and Chastain over Brad K, and it's going to work out, and then didn't work out. But that's okay, Brian. We get to move on. We get to talk road course racing, and hopefully find some value, which I think there is a lot of value. But I guess the question we got to start out with guy, obviously SVG. Our friendly offshore had him as low as like 3 or 4 to 1 at one point, and then bounced him down to like 8 or 9. Now he's back up to 6. We also have Kobayashi. We also have, who are they? There's like 3 or 4.
I'm pretty sure Jensen Button is
Button, Brody Kostecki, and
Andy Lally. I heard him mentioned on the NASCAR.
I'm missing one more, but anyways, we got all these ringers coming in to step into NASCAR Cup cars. Obviously, SVG was able to go to Chicago, do his thing, and pull out a win. Obviously a little bit of a weird experience with the rain kind of messing up things initially. A lot of people sliding into the barriers. A lot of stuff kind of went right for him to have a great day.
And I think it's important to note that that was the first ever race for NASCAR Cup cars on a street course.
Yeah.
It was not a traditional road course, and it
Yeah.
was not a roval, which all of these guys have plenty of experience driving on now.
Right.
As
And even
opposed to
like
SVG, like they've run street course type
yeah,
places a lot.
which is different because it has like the sticky stuff with the paint on it, and it's extra slippery, especially in the rain. So it definitely handles differently. So I'm really
Exactly.
curious to see if we can get some value this week this way. But I guess we got to figure out where we want to bet our cards. So Tyler Reddick and Martin Truex are your clear favorites. I think both of them present tons of value. If you can get 6 or better on Truex, I would totally bet that. If he comes out and looks awesome in qualifying, that number is gone. I love Tyler Reddick this week. I was talking to Wormy a little bit yesterday about kind of track comparisons, and obviously, there's a few tracks that makes sense with the road course, but Coda is probably the best straight up comp. Obviously, the first turn being a nasty turn. So I'm a little like, I see numbers that I really want to get in on, but I also know, like, I even rewatched the 23 Coda, and I watched the Indy road course. Like, that first turn can be a nightmare. You could all of a sudden get spun around. You could have, 6 cars go around you. Like, there's a lot that can happen. So I just imagine I'm going to have like 3 or 4 outrights all near the front, and they're all going to crash or have something happen. And like some rando is going to win, and I'm going to be very disappointed. But I love Truex and I love Reddick, and I don't usually love the top of the board. So those are both in play for me. Obviously, we have SVG. Chase Elliott is the last guy kind of in that, inside 10-1. For you, I know you hate the top of the board as well. Are you any interest going there? Or and then, are you going into SVG or potentially Chase Elliott territory?
The only guy I would consider at the top of the board here, and if you listen to the NASCAR betting preview show, Wormy talked about this, Martin Truex Jr. at BetRivers at 6-1. I think he's the only guy on this list that doesn't have the potential for having a surprisingly bad performance here, because SVG, he's only ran one ever race in the Cup Series. We don't know if he's even taking the same equipment that he had from the Chicago street course, which was the same car that Suarez used to win his road course, I believe, from the previous year. Average ass Chase Elliott last week speaks for itself. And then Tyler Reddick, him too. Like, is he going to have a race?
Can he finish the race?
Like, seriously, I cannot bet him right now at the top of the board, because that team has just not been able to put together a full race without mistakes
since Coda. And that's the thing that keeps me coming back.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
and the other thing I'm trying to figure out is with Truex, love Truex, tons of speed, has looked phenomenal all year long, but hasn't been great at Indy Road, hasn't been great at Coda.
Yeah, but to that point, I do agree. In the past, he hasn't been good there, but he also had struggled the previous couple of years at road courses before we went to Sonoma, and we grabbed that ridiculous number, and look what he did there. So, I mean, 2023 is a different year for him, in my opinion. He's clearly brought, he's turned back the clock to 2017, essentially.
Right. So it's about, and we've talked about this before, where it's like track comps, recent form, historical stuff, like kind of balancing it all and figuring out what actually is the most important. And I think Truex is the favorite for a reason. I would, like I said, 6-1, I think is a great number. I'll probably put it on the card. But I think I'm going to be a little patient, because I want to see what else we do. Cause I feel like there's opportunities, especially in that like 15, 20, 25 range, that I don't want to put a handful of those guys on and hit the top of the board. So I have to make that decision. So let's run through the names and see if we can find some other bets we love. Obviously, always shop these numbers, find the best option for you. We're going to go off of what Caesars, DK, and Rivers have, but Brian's always on BetMGM. We compare, what Circa and what Westgate have to see where that market's moving. So always shop it. We got Kyle Larson as long as 12, Chris Bell as long as 11, Kyle Busch as long as 12. AJ Allmendinger is kind of in that next range. Let's just talk about these three guys because I love all three of them. I think they all have tremendous upside this week, but they're also, I don't know, they're in a weird spot because I feel like they should be closer to the guys above them, but then there's also guys in the 20s that I don't think are that much different either. So it's like, am I getting a discount on these guys, or am I actually, is it a little too short compared to the next range?
Yeah, I think that's a good point right there, is that I think the value this week is actually a little bit beyond these guys, because in the same breath as everyone outside of Martin Truex and those guys inside 10-1, there's a lot of question marks with these guys. Kyle Larson has not looked like the Kyle Larson we thought was going to be here. Post North Wilkesboro, we thought Kyle Larson from 2021 was back. Christopher Bell, again, just like Tyler Reddick, can he finish a race? Kyle Busch, I mean, and anytime we or at least for me, if I've come into a week thinking he's going to perform well, something happens. And then AJ Allmendinger driving a Kaulig car, he's at a distinct disadvantage from everybody else, but he is a guy who has performed extremely well at this course. So I don't think he's somebody to discount. The 16-1 number, I don't know. I feel like he should be more 20-1 just based on the equipment.
I just don't think we'll get it. And I think if he qualifies well, we're looking at 12-1. So I think if you want dinger exposure, and I think all of these guys are probably better head-to-head bets to grab value if you can find it, or get some nice top 10, top 5 numbers. There is some numbers floating around. I will say KFB getting to ride in that Reddick vehicle that was so good in 2022 is definitely nice. Obviously, he's a pretty solid street race, a road course guy, and he's been fast. Too. Yeah. So I kind of like KFB, but it's just there's a lot of names we got to figure out where to dive in. Brody Kostecki in front of the next range is just mind-boggling to me.
SVG
Byron as long as 22, Chris Buescher as long as 22, Denny Hamlin as long as 20, and even lump Daniel Suarez in for this, but I think he's a clear tier down for me. Byron, not traditionally an amazing road course racer, but was phenomenal at COTA in 2023, is clearly leveled up. Although Hendrick, I'm curious about them because they seem to, especially over the last month, they have not been as consistent. They have not been as dominant. They have not been as fast.
Remember, William Byron kind of alluded to this a few weeks ago when he said this is not the portion of the season that they were looking towards performing extremely well. It was more about learning as they went into the playoffs. So, I mean, you can't say that this wasn't something that they had kind of, told us about. And Byron himself was the one that said, he does not expect to be coming out here winning races this portion of the season.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because we tried to spin it a little bit in they want to get Bowman and they want to do the stuff with Elliott, but all the Hendrick cars have just not been good.
Yeah.
So it's
well, and in this range, okay, scenario here. Had Chris Buescher not won the previous 2 races, this number 22-1 is probably something people are considering. I mean, it's probably a little bit longer had he not won
the one thing I will say,
but he's been good at road courses.
He's been good at road courses, but he hasn't been as good at COTA. He's typically better at Sonoma style.
Okay, but what have you done for me lately?
Fair.
This goes back to are you weighing the track comp from early in the season, or are you taking more into account how the teams have evolved during the season? There is so much going on in the sport right now, which is making betting really hard. I mean, for me anyways, because it's hard to know which side of that like pendulum you want to be on from a race to race basis. But nobody outside of maybe Truex is driving better or is as fast as Chris Buescher right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's rocket ship Fenway Keselowski. Like we understand that they've been incredibly fast, but we can also say, like, Buescher didn't seem like a legitimate contender until stage 3 when things got kind of jumbled up, and all of a sudden here comes Chris Buescher, and he's insanely fast. And he seems like a guy that when he gets to clean air, and he's been good on shorter tracks, on road courses. So, like, in theory, this could make sense, but it's all, and you know who we love, Brian, who was fast at Sonoma, who's been good at Coda, who constantly gets short numbers courtesy of our friendly sports books. It's Dennis Hamlin. Like, I think there's even 22s floating around out there if you shop it. Like, he might be my favorite from this range.
Yeah, I definitely think Denny is somebody that should be on a lot of people's short lists this week. He was somebody that I believe going into the Sonoma week, I loved his outright just because the price was ridiculous and he put it on pole there. Yep. And then Chicago, I actually had a pole bet on Denny Hamlin, and he put it on pole. So, I mean, again, like you're looking at pre-qualifying value. Denny has been fantastic at the last 2 road courses, practice and qualifying wise. Now, Sunday's been a little bit of a different story, but if you caught our show with Derek Yoder last week, there are books that will basically cash you out of tickets. So, I mean, if you can get Denny at 20-1 and say he puts this in the first 2 rows, this is probably going to 10, and you could potentially cash out on that, for a decent profit, and then just pocket whatever your initial wager was and then bet on the house. Something else.
or bet him to get on the pole and then hopefully you get that. But I mean, we've talked about Denny a little bit and like how excited we are about him. But yeah, I know Sunday hasn't exactly been, but that was also Chicago Street was a disaster from the beginning, and all of a sudden the rain went away and they were able to actually get a good race in, but Denny was kind of out of the picture by the time that happened. And so that kind of stunk, but I am curious to see if we can get a solid performance from him, and he can reward people who get in. And honestly, like I'm looking back at old Coda right now at 23. Daniel Suarez finished 5th after, and he started 5th, finished 27th, but had the 5th best driver rating. He led a lap, was really strong until probably an accident. I have to go back and double check, but I don't hate him at, if you can get him at 22. I think grabbing your favorite lottery tickets right now of guys that you think can legitimately, if not put it on the pole, be right there.
Yeah.
And I think Suarez makes sense. I think Hamlin makes sense. And I think Byron even makes sense as somebody who could do that for sure.
Yeah. Kind of like we talked about though, with the Hendrick cars, I do kind of worry about their recent form that we've seen out of them. Yeah. I just don't know if that's, a microcosm of what they were talking about for the summer, or there is a legit issue like the rest of the teams have caught up.
Yeah. And I don't love Byron at 15 or Hamlin at 16. If that's the best you can get, I'd probably wait or pass. But if you can get him at north at 20, I'm happy to take a little bit of a stab and see what you can get yourself into.
Yeah. And on that, I am going to add the Denny number. It's way too big for a driver of his caliber.
Wow, that's crazy to me. Okay, so this range, I think it might be even more fun. I there's probably like 2 other crazy people besides me that are actually going to be interested here, but Austin Cindric at 28-1.
That is
Full Tank with Phil talked about him. I'm on board. I think he's fun. I think he has potential. He's another guy that not been, it's been kind of a weird year, but if there's places where you want Austin Cindric, it's road courses where he
True,
was
very
good at
true.
COTA and super speedways. And he needs a win to make the playoffs. So this could be a really good opportunity for him to make a move. And I think he is somebody that is worthwhile to take a stab on.
The only thing about him, though, is I just don't envision him being a race-winning car, and I don't think we're going to get enough wackiness in order for him to put it up front to win. Now,
Brian,
he has finished 6th in the previous 2 road courses, Chicago and Sonoma, I believe it was. But Sonoma, he actually finished
he was
25th.
sixth at
He showed
COTA,
up.
started
Yeah,
third in that race.
Yeah, he was good at COTA and Chicago, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I like him as like more in the top 10 market, maybe matchups. I just don't know if I could get there with outrights because I think there's other guys longer than Cindric that I'd be willing to throw a dart on.
And I think I'm going to try and be a little more reserved this week, Brian. I'm going to try and keep that betting card a little more. I think sometimes we get a little too spray the board Saturday and want to bet everything. So I'm working on keeping myself in check because I have one name that I'm going to add, and I can't believe it's gotten longer than when I got it at 22. But Ross Chastain at 30-1. Yes, please. Yes, please. This is a guy that has done amazing on road courses, has been really strong. Obviously, the COTA thing was weird because he finished better, but he like cut a corner, I think, and had obviously got a penalty. So his finishing position didn't look as good as kind of the how he actually ran. But I was pretty surprised to see him at 22, and now that he's at 30, I'm even more kind of taken back.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
You're not buying it?
No, I just...
The cool thing is too, Brian, is at 30-1, you can put like a quarter of a unit, and if he wins, you're really happy.
That is very true. I definitely can attest to that. Like I think that's the fun about going down the board right there is that you could pepper the board with a couple of these guys.
Yeah.
The only thing is it's going to require some craziness.
Oh, for sure. But I think Indy's shown us the last 2 years the craziness is definitely on the table.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like unlike most races where we talk about guys down here that don't really have a chance to win the race, like obviously you'll need things to go well in qualifying. But I think a lot of these guys have very little legitimate chances to contend for the race win, or if they don't get it themselves. Like Byron could be there, Buescher could be there, Hamlin could be there, Suarez could be there, Cindric. I think McDowell's probably better like top 5, top 10 type bet. Still like him quite a bit, and I think Ross could absolutely be there. I will say Kobayashi.
That's the guy that's on my list.
Is priced all over the board. There's our friendly favorite offshore that has him at 66.
He's 60 at Circa.
He is as low as 30 at Tipico. Maybe even less depending on where you go. He's a great unknown. He is a very talented driver. He's going to be in a solid ride. I just don't know that if we're convincing ourselves that he's got a legit shot because of what SVG did, or because he's actually that talented, and we're probably just getting a really good price on kind of a lottery ticket of a driver.
Well, I think if you watched or listened to the NASCAR betting preview show, you heard it a couple of times. Like the scuttlebutt is that this guy during testing was without a doubt the unquestioned best driver in that garage, not just the 2311 garage, but the Toyota garage at this track and testing and doing like the sim work. So, I mean,
Tyler Reddick was impressed. I know they were saying Dale Jr. was talking about him on the podcast today or yesterday, whenever that was.
Well, Dale Jr. also couldn't remember whether or not this was the hot dog eating guy either. So just because his name is Kobayashi.
It's probably more of a bit, but yeah, I get what you're saying. But yeah, I am also adding him at 50-1 at DraftKings. I think 40 would probably be as low as I'd be willing to go.
Yeah, and I think so. Kind of what I was talking about when you were in that like 20 to 25 range. I think I would rather place a smaller bet on a Kobayashi at 50-1 than even hit those guys in the 20 range, because I do think, realistically, they probably have around the same amount of chance to win the race. But because there is so much unknown with him as opposed to a Cindric, a McDowell, or, even a Buescher for that matter, like he's going to get the bigger number. And that, that's why SVG was priced the way he was going into the Chicago street race until he blew the doors off of everybody. I'm not expecting him to win, but for a pure number bet, like, this is great.
He has the immense talent. He's going to be in a decent car. And I think because of what SVG did, if Kobayashi has a really good qualifying result, people will be more interested to bet him. The numbers will move the books will move his numbers faster, and his numbers will be gone really, really, really quick. And I mean, the fact that you're already getting to 30, 35, 40 in some spots says all you need to know, because he was in the 60s in a lot of places. And if you have access to the 60s, I would highly, highly, highly recommend, $5, $10, like, have a nice little payday.
You could even bet $1,
a tenth of your unit. If you bet $20, if you bet $200, like, figure it out. But like, I think he's worth a nibble at 50 or 60. Beyond there, we get into some interesting names: Ty Gibbs, Ryan Blaney, Chase Briscoe, Alex Bowman, Kevin Harvick. Like, I don't know that I want to bet any of these guys outright. Is there anyone you want to throw a dart at beyond Kobayashi, or are you kind of good there?
Well, I mean, you heard, I think it was Full Tank Phil talking about Ryan Blaney. The price is right, 45-1. I mean, how often are you ever going to see Ryan Blaney at that number? If you want to dabble on that, I don't hate that. I mean, he's not normally somebody you would expect to win a race at a road course, because he's never really performed extremely well. But if the strategy falls his direction, we've seen it a couple times where he's running up front based on that. So, I mean, it's a possibility, but
I would much rather come up to the 20s and still get a really nice number on some, like, I would much rather bet Hamlin and Cindric than bet Ryan Blaney.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I would much rather bet Hamlin than Ryan Blaney for sure.
Okay. All right. So in terms of outrights, you looks like you have 2 on the card officially. So what are your official outrights on the card? And then who else is in consideration for you to potentially add?
Yeah. So right now I got the Denny number at 20-1 and then the Kobayashi number at 50-1. I'm contemplating going back with Buescher. I mean, like, I almost talked myself into that, because had he not won the previous 2 races, I think just, right now I'm thinking to myself, well, what is more likely to happen? Him to not win a race again, which is probably the case. But I mean, if we were coming into this in a vacuum and, with completely forgetting about what just happened, I would probably love this number and he'd probably be on the card.
Yeah, and it's a real, like, conundrum, right? Like, because you want to think of each race as its own individual thing, focus on it that way. But there is a lot of, like, can he really win 3 in a row? But we didn't think he could win 2 in a row. He did that. So,
well, and like you said, especially now with him having the 2 wins under his belt, they can be a lot more aggressive than most other teams.
They could be a little safer and not push it. Or if it's close, and like we've seen it all year, where him and Brad K are both kind of contending, Buescher can
Brad K to a win. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I mean,
it's real interesting. So I've officially added Ross at 30 and Kobayashi at 50. Hamlin is like on the tip of my tongue to add. Cindric, I'm legitimately interested in.
You're disgusting.
I know, it's really gross. And like I said, I do like Martin Truex, and I'm really tempted just to, like, maybe go Truex and, like, one of the longer shot guys, probably Denny, and just call it, because then I'm getting and I'm getting my Toyota exposure plus Ross and Kobayashi as more lottery tickets because, I might be putting 4 or 5 outrights on the card, but at the prices that they're going on the card, it's going to be like 2 or 3 units at the most. So I might do like 2 units on Truex and then like a unit or 2 on the rest of the guys. Like that's kind of how I'm envisioning it, at least as we sit here right now. So let's run through some other odds and some other thoughts and see where we land, and then we'll figure out how we're going to get around. Let's go to the top 10 market. I think there's some opportunity. Obviously, you always want to shop it because numbers swing wildly. Allmendinger at minus 118 when he's minus 200 is kind of wild.
That's a top 10 number?
That's a top 10 number per BetRivers.
Let me just double check that because that seems ridiculous.
Yeah, that seems short. Oh, and then I know we didn't really.
He's minus 110.
Yeah, he's minus 120 on Barstool, so that's.
Oh wait, sorry, I misspoke. He's minus 210 at BetRivers.
He's minus 120 on Barstool, so that's a pretty good number for him.
Can you even still bet on Barstool?
Yep. So we were talking about it, I think a few weeks ago. We're like, why did their stuff switch over and kind of get weird all of a sudden? And now we have our answer. Penn Gaming is out of Barstool and into ESPN, so we'll see how that plays out over the next little while. I know Todd Furman was sharing some interesting stuff and some articles about kind of the transition, what that looks like. But yeah, we'll see how that plays out. Buescher at minus 110. Hamlin is even. I'm debating that because like I feel like if he qualifies well, that number is obviously gone. But do I want to grab better payouts, like a top 5, that kind of stuff? Yeah. So if my thesis is qualifies well, gets near the front, that the outright number is 7 or 12 to 1, and the top 5 market is crushed. Do I want more of a payout if that were to happen? Where if he stinks, having him at even, maybe it's okay, but I don't know.
It is interesting that he would be shorter than even money.
Yeah, I know he's minus 125 a lot of places, so obviously if you have access to Barstool, it's a good number. And I'm also lining up to bet Austin Cindric as a top 10, but I don't want to bet Denny Hamlin. So, but I think Hamlin probably, I don't know. Maybe that's just more about me.
Yeah, and so, like, I don't know. I guess I'm becoming. Well, obviously not last week. I can't say that, but I'm just looking at the numbers, and so for Kumai Kobayashi, plus 200 at Caesars, the top 10. I don't think the number is long enough for me to get there.
No, and I think that's what we need to look at too. And I think the books are kind of balancing their.
Yeah, they would rather get exposure on the outright rather than get murdered in a top 10, which is way more likely.
Yep. I was looking at that. I think there's some interesting ways to play it. We'll look at that, but I think in terms of top 10, like I don't think it makes any sense. There was some Bubba Wallace exposure.
I was just going to say that. Look, we've talked about him before at road courses where he's kind of taken that step up at different types of tracks that he's never performed well at. But in, the same way that Tyler Reddick has really struggled to put together full races, Bubba Wallace, same thing. You don't know what you're going to get over the long run. And this is a guy that's never done well at road courses. He's had speed, but long run speed. And then also, one thing that I don't think that team really has under wraps quite yet is, being in the top tier of strategy.
Yeah.
And so, like, you're looking at a road course race that does not have the stage break cautions. So, are they going to make the right call? And then it was Rowdy something on the NASCAR betting preview show. He brought up a great point, and I thought, this was really something that more people should pay attention to. Is that Bubba Wallace is almost racing Michael McDowell as opposed to racing the field, because he just needs to stay above the cut line. And right now he's pretty safe. I believe he's like 60 something points above the cut. So he's not racing the top end guys. He's racing those middle tier dudes. And he may be satisfied with the top 10, not going for a win, or satisfied with a top 15 as long as he's finishing ahead of the guys that are behind him in points.
So like a top 10 might be a little more interesting for him on a week where, it makes sense. Cause like I was looking at his top Toyota numbers, but I was like, if he does that, he has to beat Denny, he has to beat Truex, he has to
I would just bet him to win at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the balance we always got to strike. Yeah, interesting. So, yeah.
I mean, now that we just talked about that,
what are we doing?
I am a Bubba apologist. So
you are. You sure are.
I'm gonna do it. Why not? I love throwing money away. What can I say?
You're betting. You bet. You play the hits, Brian. Ryan Blaney, Joe.
I am not going to Ryan Blaney this week. I can assure you he will not be on my betting
Although
card.
you weren't on Christopher Buescher for his win, so that's
thanks for rubbing it in. Sir.
You're the ultimate Christopher Buescher stan, and then you don't bet him for his 2 wins. So.
And like I tweeted, I'm really sad now because when I go to the race in the fall, or when you and I go next spring, trying to get a picture with Chris Buescher is going to be impossible now because he's a rock star.
He's a legend now. You can get 2-1 on Kobayashi. I don't hate that at Caesars.
That's not that good though. Like,
well, it's all relative, Brian. They're only giving us. I mean, you could just not bet, I guess. But compared to what's the rest of the field, I think is interesting.
Well, I think what's interesting with a guy like him is like that number to me is too short. But if you could find a matchup where, say, he's a dog, a slight dog, I would much rather bet that.
Well, let's find some matchups and see if we can't find some value. So Suarez versus Hamlin, you can get a nice price on Suarez. I don't hate that. Don't love a lot of this stuff. Okay, let's talk this one. I told you I like Reddick. I want to get some exposure. I'm trying to figure out how. Reddick versus Truex. You can get some nice prices on Reddick versus Truex. I think. Let me go over here because I want to.
That's terrifying, though.
Oh, I know. It's very terrifying because James Small and Marty have been geniuses all year long, and Reddick's just been like crashing. Where's that number?
For what it's worth, they're both minus 114 at BetRivers in that matchup.
Right, and I'm getting plus money with him here. Yeah, plus 100 at DraftKings. What is it here?
Oh,
plus 105. So I don't know. It's interesting.
All right, I found. Actually, I have 2 matchups that I'm hitting right now. Okay, so that last one, AJ Allmendinger plus 100 over SVG. I'm smashing that one. And then at BetRivers, you can get AJ Allmendinger minus 114 against Brody Kostecki. I'm also going to smash that because I do think that the Australian supercars guys are a little bit overvalued this weekend. When you're talking about probably the most consistent road course guy that we have in NASCAR.
Yeah. So it's Caesars and at where?
BetRivers Allmendinger minus 114.
BetRivers. I also did Suarez versus SVG at DK plus 100.
Yeah, I mean, this could be to our detriment, which, I mean,
Sure.
if you've been following along most of the last couple of weeks, you're probably going to want to fade the majority of our
Yeah,
picks.
just go all in on SVG and you'll be just fine.
Exactly. It is interesting to note that SVG opened at 20-1 at Westgate.
Yeah, and now look where he's at.
Yeah, I think he was 10-1 when I checked it this morning.
All right, so we have over at Barstool, Hendrick versus Chastain, Bell versus SVG at -110. RIP my betting card. SVG is absolutely winning this week.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, that's a nice little.
Remember when I said I was going
group.
to keep my card limited? We're only on Wednesday. Practice and qualifying hasn't happened, and
Oh,
it's
gosh.
already too long. I really should be like 3 or 4 bets, maybe 5. I can't help myself. I see numbers. I feel like I'm doing it right. Like I'm fading one guy, so if he kills me, he kills me. But I'm fine. Let's go back over here.
Yeah, and I'm interested too because
The top Chevy, Chase is your favorite for some reason. Kyle Busch.
It's his stupid history at road
Yeah.
courses.
Well, and we talked a little bit about it. Like for Chevy, I think. I mean, you could probably supplement with some of these guys, but I think if they're capable of being top Chevy, they're going to be in they're going to be capable for winning the race. Where with like Ford, that might not be the case. So I think there is some opportunity there. I think Chevy. I think there's potential numbers like Byron 10-1.
What car is Kostecki driving? Is he driving the RCR or the RCR car?
No, I was just looking at that because what's his name? Bear with us. This is awesome radio while I do research.
Yeah, he's driving the 33.
Okay. Yeah, so Kostecki's doing RCR. Kobayashi's 2311. Obviously, Van Gisbergen is Trackhouse. And I like that Kobayashi's in the 2311 with Tyler Reddick. They can get some bounce some good ideas off of each other. I don't know. I think this is where you find the odds. Like obviously Buescher is where he is, but Hendrick could be fun, McDowell could be fun. And I don't trust any of these other guys to really make a noise, so I think there's potential there. 4-1.
That's kind of wild. Think about the world we're living in right now where Chris Buescher is opening as the favorite for a manufacturer.
Yeah. But think about where we are. Think about recent form.
Yeah.
And see, Kobayashi is 12-1 to be top Toyota. And obviously there's some heavy hitters, Denny, Reddick, Truex for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't hate that as like I guess it's just if he's top Toyota, how reasonably far back could he be? Like 3 or 4?
Exactly.
Maybe?
I was just going to say probably top 5.
Yeah. And I think that's way better than his. So let's go top 3. He's 13, so you can get a better number there.
What was he 12-1?
12.
Oh yeah, his top 5 is probably like 8, I'm gonna say.
He's 5-1.
Oh yeah, that's
yeah. But I do like his top 3, especially because it's 13-1. Because he could be top 3 and finish behind Reddick and Truex and catch up for you.
I mean, I mean, what we saw out of Truex and kind of Reddick, as long as he can keep the tires on it, I don't see. I think that's a possibility, but
yeah. All right, Brian. Anything else you want to look at?
I mean,
guess as we sit here now, before we review our card and give the people a best bet, who is the driver you're considering adding, or what bets are sticking in your mind that you're like, I think there's something in play here?
Well, so obviously Chris Buescher, like I want to get some exposure to him just because I think he's underrated at road courses. He's clearly been driving amazing.
Yeah.
I just worry that like regression to the mean is coming.
No.
And it's going to be one of those races where he has an issue and wrecks out, or just, has problems.
Yeah. No, I think that's very legitimate. Our RFK has been so good, and I think if Keselowski, and I think if he has a bad day, Keselowski has a bad day too. But we'll have to see. I still think they qualify well. I will say, yeah, I want to get some Tyler Reddick exposure. I haven't figured out how. I want to figure out what else I'm doing at the outright card. If you have your favorite outright bet, please drop it down in the comments. Let us know who you're looking at. I wanted to bring up SRX really quick, just because Full Tank with Phil has been on fire with his SRX thoughts.
Yes.
And he likes Chase Briscoe plus 375. Obviously, we're at Eldora, a place that Tony Stewart is extremely fond of, and I think he's actually part owner of the track. But Tony Stewart's been bad in SRX, and so for him to be the favorite is pretty wild. We'll see what other books like. It's kind of a unique book per book, and not a lot of books give you SRX numbers. But if you can get down at Caesars, I think Chase Briscoe's fine. You can also fade Tony Stewart just kind of in general, like Ryan Newman plus 210. I know it's Ryan Newman, but Tony Stewart's been pretty bad. So,
Austin Dillon's running this week.
Something to think about. Yeah, we got Austin Dillon in there, and Ryan Newman is. I mean, he's still pretty highly thought of, and then kind of the rest of the group. So Tony Kanaan.
That brings up an interesting betting opportunity as well, in my opinion. When you go to trucks, what's his name? So SVG is racing this weekend in trucks in the 41 Nice car. Caesars doesn't have a matchup, but I'd be curious to see what type of inflation his odds are being seen in the truck series as well. Based on the
interesting thing too is he's never run trucks. He's 30-1. But he's run one cup race and he's 6-1.
Exactly.
So
he won the race and he was probably the best car.
Yeah, no, for sure. But like,
trucks are way different than the next gen car, and he's never run an oval either. So I mean,
right.
Like, if he thought the aggression and the bumping and banging was crazy in a Cup Series race, imagine what it's going to be like in the trucks.
Yeah, I think I would much rather bet him on trucks and just assume that he's incredibly talented than take a shot on him at the other places. But
I want to fade him in matchups if I could find him. Honestly,
we'll see what gets posted. All right, let's review our card. Let's give out our favorite bet as we sit here tonight. And then as we add stuff, we will always tweet it out. Otherwise, we will be back with you live Sunday morning. So make sure you are joining us live. We are here. We build DraftKings lineup. We answer your questions. We talk through our betting card, any final bets, any final thoughts. We usually try and do it before Wormies goes live. So maybe we'll go back to the 9:30, Brian. I think that worked a little better. Obviously, NASCAR moving the race up an hour kind of killed that too, but so we'll do 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 out on the West Coast. Nice. For our live stream. I'll put up a thing, so you make sure you subscribe so you know when we go live. But it's Fade SVG week, so I have Chris Bell at -110. I have the Dinger at +100 and Suarez at +100. I also have Dinger over Kostecki, which Brian found. Just going to go with Dinger, who I trust as a road course ringer. He was the original road course ringer before all these guys came over. I'm adding Hendrick at +1 at plus money to top 10. I added Chastain at 30 and Kobayashi at 50. Like I said, I'm probably just gonna throw two. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. He's been a rocket ship. He's been dominant.
Woo! Wow.
I mean, it's 6-1. Like at some point, you gotta. I'm gonna stop farting around and see if I can get in. So I grabbed some Truex. I will probably add, and I need to do it before practice and qualifying. You know what? Just screw it. I'm just gonna call it here, and I'll have my outright card. And
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's just like I want that. I want access. I really like Tyler Reddick. I really like William Byron. I want some, I want some Chris Bell action, but the way those guys have been going and having issues, I just can't do it. So I'll take the 20, add that to the card, and we'll call it a day. So I have 4 units on my outright card, 3 of them on Truex, half a unit on Denny, and then a quarter on Kobayashi and Chastain. So that is where my head is at. Brian, go ahead and review your card and give the people your best bet.
Yeah, so I only have 2 outrights right now, both Yodas, Denny at 20 and Kobayashi at 50. Hopefully both of them can perform well practice and qualifying. I got one top 10 as we sit here right now, and that's Bubba, just because it's 6-1. He's my guy. All we got to do is get inside that top 10, accumulate more playoff points. And then my 2 matchups right now, I'm doing the fade, the supercars guys, and going with Dinger the Ringer here against SVG and Brody Kostecki at plus 100 at Caesars versus SVG and minus 114 against Kostecki at BetRivers. And I think for my best bet, I'm going to go with Dinger over Kostecki simply because it's Kostecki's first race. SVG was phenomenal. I could be completely wrong. Maybe he just is that talented. Highly doubtful, but I just think Dinger is going to have a advantage over Brody much more so than SVG, which could be a little bit more of a closer type of battle.
No, I think that makes sense, and obviously the price reflects it. I added Cindric top 10 as my best bet. That we're still getting at plus money. I love that. I will probably keep an eye on him. We'll see how practice and qualifying goes, but very excited. I did want to check one thing before we get out of here, and go to NASCAR and go to future bets. And what is Joe Gibbs plus 175 and Toyota? Where's the manufacturer one? Oh, here it is. Toyota's plus 150 to win the race. That's really tempting considering where we're at mentally with all these things.
Well, I mean, that's Truex, Reddick, Bell, Hamlin. You get the 2 race favorites, and
you get Kobayashi, which we'll see. They also have race to go over overtime at plus money, which I think is based on what we've seen is pretty on brand.
I don't know. Because there's no stage break cautions, the likelihood, in my opinion, is that it's going to be pretty strung out.
You can get Buescher at 22 here, Brian. It's fine.
Give me more value on the top 10. Like if I could get him at like minus 110 or minus 120 at like Caesars for a top 10, I'd bet that.
Yep. All right. This was a lot of fun. It was good catching up, Brian. Obviously, we're excited for this week's race. Let us know, like I said, who you're looking at in terms of outrights. If you have a couple, feel free to share them down in the comments. Brian and I will be back live Sunday morning, so please come hang out, bring your questions. Let's talk some NASCAR. For Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next time.